That we have helicopters that took off from the tour operator, 3 of them early on before everything started, that go fly over top of the Mandalay Bay and then turn their transponders off. And they're off for the entire duration of the shooting. Go fly over top of the Mandalay Bay and then turn their transponders off. And they're off for the entire duration of the shooting. In what you see, 9 to 5. Don't really know what happens there. We have helicopters that appear to be shooting that are circling around the Mandalay Bay in the footage. And we have much later, we have reports of a armed gunman. First, it's a possible suspect on the 4th floor of the Mandalay Bay. We're talking like an hour to an hour and a half later. And then just shortly after that first call, and I'm pretty sure this one was reported by police, not like a 911 call, but like on police radio. I could be wrong about that. It's a suspect, and then it escalates, and a few minutes later, it's like we have a armed gunman on the 4th floor of the Mandalay Bay. And then we have no follow-up on that. We have no context of what happened there, whether that was real or not, we don't know. But other than that, there's actually a serious lack of anything happening in the Mandalay Bay. There is the explosive breaching of the police team getting in there, the one SWAT guy with his team breaching into Paddock's room. That's a question. We don't know. But other than that, there's not a whole lot of like reported activity.
Right.
One thing that I believe it was Conan again that noticed this is in the photos of the room, he noticed that there were loaded AK-47 magazines, AK-style magazines, but there was no AKs in the room.
And they were loaded with 7.62 by 39 rounds.
And they were full. They were completely filled.
There's a whole suitcase full of loaded AK mags.
AK-47. It was definitely AK fully automatic.
There's a whole suitcase full of loaded AK mags.
AK-47. It was definitely AK fully automatic.
There's a whole suitcase full of loaded AK mags. There's a whole suitcase full of loadout, AK, max.
And they were loaded with 7.62 by 39 rounds.
And they were full. They were completely filled, as though you had AKs that you were going to go shoot in the desert, or whatever the actual explanation for why Paddock thought he was there, whatever that was. He speculates. I don't have a better explanation, but John Cullen speculates that the shot that we hear earlier in the day that was reported by someone on the floor, they said it was like 3:30 or so. Someone reported that they heard a shot in the Mandalay Bay, a single shot. He speculates that that's when Stephen Paddock was killed. That they get in, they open his door, whether they've already manipulated the key cards or they just knock and walk in and shoot him. I don't know. But he speculates that that's when Paddock was actually killed. But if you're playing out this narrative to try to make that make sense, if you are Saudi hit squads and you walk into this room of Paddocks filled with all these weapons, you're going to pick up the one you're familiar with.
باقي شيء ولا خلاص؟ باقي شيء hey.
Right? That would make sense in my mind.
Would.
Right?
I should have asked this earlier. Has the hotel ever released all the relevant surveillance footage?
Not a single ounce of it. No. Even though there is endless surveillance footage, obviously.
Of course, every
and it's not that they didn't release footage that disproved people. It's not that there was 911 calls and we were all people were conspiracy theorizing that it was like something happened in the Bellagio. So they released footage that showed nothing happened in the Bellagio. That's not what happened. They didn't release anything at all. Nada.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. And they put gag orders on all of their employees. And everything, it was just this
Who
chill
owns MGM?
on everything. I actually don't remember. At the time, I'm trying to remember if this guy was
Publicly traded.
This guy got into politics. The CEO of MGM, he sold off. Oh yeah. Man, this is the thing about this story is there's so many details that are like, what the fuck? The CEO of MGM, I should almost refer to my notes. He sold off 80% of his MGM stock like 6 months before the shooting happened. It was, I'm probably going to get the numbers wrong. It was a lot of money. But the number 80%, I feel pretty dang confident about. He sold a shitload of his MGM stock in the months leading into this shooting. I think it was 6 months before. He later on was chosen to be the head of the COVID task force in Las Vegas, if I remember correctly. There's a lot of insider stuff like that of like,
Perfect.
okay, what the hell is going on?
Has anyone ever asked, like the U.S. government, the Saudi government, about any of this?
I mean, other than, journalists online, like podcasters that have sort of like posed the question. John Conan is very fond of posing the question. Mindy Robinson made a documentary where like she rhetorically posed the question very angrily of like, what the fuck is this, guys? Like, are we ever going to get answers? Are you ever going to answer for this? And obviously there's no response to any of that as far as I've ever seen. I don't think anyone has ever really posed the question. And I think that there, you could explain it as a conspiracy theorist of like, it's like they're not going to tell us about 9/11. So why would they? But when you go, the thing that's really interesting in my mind about this Saudi theory, which is very much just a theory, is that it does explain why it would be geopolitically relevant and sensitive to this day.
Oh,
and why, right? Like, because then you're actually talking about U.S.-Saudi relations right now with the soon-to-be king of Saudi Arabia. You're talking about Trump's family relationships because Trump was the president at that time and he was fresh in, and I'm sure that he had something to do with, if that's what happened, I'm sure that Trump had something to do with the response and the security and whatever happened. But then you're also talking about U.S.-Israel relations because bin Salman's relationship with Israel is very different than this more hardliner, old school factions relationship with Israel, right? And so there's all of these relationships that shift around Trump's presidency in the United States and his relationship to bin Salman and bin Salman's ascendancy in Saudi and their relationship to everyone else in the Middle East, which is so critical. And so it's like, well, that does start to explain in my mind why it might not just be that they're covering it up because they're embarrassed and don't want to tell you, but they might actually have this sort of like trump card, so to speak, of national security. There's like a legitimate reason why we're covering this up. So everybody shut your mouths. Because it's hard to like, how do you cover up something so vast?
Those would be the victims in this attempted murder, if in fact that's what it was. I have seen that before where people are on the wrong side of an act of violence or the victims of it, but they don't want to talk about it.
Well, not especially when you're a king of a kingdom so powerful. You don't want to expose a weakness. You don't want to, and also
I've seen that.
You don't want to. I mean, you certainly don't want to expose, let alone the methods, techniques, and of the things that intelligence agencies don't want to ever give away. It's like the way we do covert operations and covert extractions and all that. But even beyond like giving away state secrets like that, it's like, you also don't want to expose all of the collateral damage that was caused in the wake of this thing.
No, right.
Look, we have a tragedy. We're going to do, and what happened in Las Vegas is in many ways a miracle. The police department has done such an incredible job, and we'll be talking about gun laws as time goes by. But I do have to say, how quickly the police department was able to get in was really very much of a miracle. They've done an amazing job. Go ahead, John. He was a sick man, a demented man, a lot of problems, I guess, and we're looking into him very, very seriously, but we're dealing with a very, very sick individual. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Exactly.
Because inevitably, so let's just imagine that Mohammed bin Salman, they tried to kill him in Vegas and he was the good guy in the story, even though, that is not what's being said here. The life is all shades of gray, but there's almost no version of that story where a civilian isn't killed because of his team as well. And, an American isn't killed because the SWAT team wasn't there to do that because they were over there doing that, which by the way, where the fuck was the SWAT team? Right. So now that we've gone through all of this narrative and evidence just like kind of teasing out, and then we come back to where was the SWAT team? It makes a lot more sense, I bet, in the audience's mind. And this is, for me, this was how my own digging into it happened, because I came into this naive and I look at all this journalism, and early on I stumble across the body cam footage of them breaching the room, and it doesn't really stick out to me that there's only one SWAT guy with them, even though I acknowledged it.
Hey, Brett, can they clear these rooms behind us?
They already cleared.
Okay.
We cleared every room up to this point. You're good. You got everybody's completely out.
Copy that. What's Jair saying?
Just two.
They're good. Hey, what was Jair saying? You guys hear that? Deeper point, said he's going to put 3 shots. Okay. He just pulled it, okay? You guys got it. You good? Go down, you understand?
Yep.
Yep. Okay, they got it. Yes. We're going to come up behind you. Keep moving, okay? Hammer. Are you ready? Period. Are you ready? Keep moving. Keep moving. Keep moving now. Stop.
Okay, Sean, you can come on.
Watch out, Sean. I'm going to come up right next to you, buddy. Okay? Get not moving half the stage. 4, 5, 4, okay?
A lot of drills.
Yeah.
And drill a lot of drills and drill bits, all kinds of tools.
This was eerie.
Very eerie.
But it was like, that's weird. But then, like, after this snaking journey through trying to learn all these other elements of what was going on, and you start to learn about the airport, and you learn about the other hotels, and you learn about the possible extraction of, like, a king, then it's like, okay, so where was the SWAT team?
The possible extraction of a king, do we have any suggestion that happened?
No, we do not know. And honestly, now that I'm mentioning it, and I'm kind of thinking it through right now, one of the only, like, and I'm not saying this is concrete evidence, I'm actually saying the opposite, because one of the most concrete pieces of evidence is that the SWAT team was not at the place where they should have been. Right. They should have been at Stephen Paddock's door. This is one of the most decorated, experienced, and well-funded biggest SWAT team, one of the biggest SWAT teams in America. And they had one guy, they had one shooter in one room that they should have been breaching. But when you actually look at the true story, there's all these other things happening that might have needed their attention more. But my understanding is that SWAT is actually used for protection of high-level dignitaries, used for extraction of high-level, like, that's the kind of thing that I could imagine them actually being diverted to, right?
For sure.
Because if this event was this more complex thing of some sort, they're not going to send them to Stephen Paddock's room. That's the last place you want to send your SWAT team, right? Especially once the shooting from Paddock's room has stopped. Because if you're already getting reports of something going on at the airport, or if what we're talking about is happening at all, then you're probably getting reports directly from this whoever high-level dignitary or person that's trying to be assassinated. There's probably deeper levels of intel being fed to whoever makes the decision of where the SWAT team goes.
Of course.
And just be advised, there's an active shooter on the airport. This is a blanket broadcast for all aircraft. Just a heads up. Keep your speed up to the ramp and...
And so you suddenly have a pretty obvious explanation of, like, the SWAT team wasn't there because something more important was happening.
Yes.
And I don't think, and we know the SWAT team wasn't at the concert. We don't have evidence of the SWAT team being at the hotels. I don't have any evidence of them being at the airport, although we don't really have enough evidence to say whether they were or not at the airport. But where were they? Because that actually, I think, is one of the biggest pieces of this puzzle.
And he would have Secret Service as well.
Right?
So you said about 60 people were killed.
Yeah.
Over 100, I know, were shot.
Yeah, I think it was 400 plus were wounded in total.
So that's a lot of survivors. That's a lot of families of the murdered. Have any of them raised these questions?
A lot of them did early on, and I think a lot of them still do. But a lot of people, I think, feel voiceless, and in a lot of ways are voiceless. If no one's going to go to you, if the media is not going to investigate it, if there's never going to be a federal investigation, then they have no recourse. And so what wound up happening was independent media started going to them.
So there was no, I was in the fabled mainstream media at the time. I don't remember anyone really pushing on this very hard. Do you know of anyone?
As far as I'm aware, you're the one that pushed the hardest.
And it wasn't that hard.
No, yeah.
We did get hassled by the police in Las Vegas, which was striking.
Weird.
Because, you work at Fox News, basically pro-cop. All the cops know that. I've never had any problem with any cop. They're always so nice. And I think the only time I've ever had in the last 20 years anyway, I've ever had a hostility from the police was in Las Vegas. And they tried to block us from our camera position, which was in a vacant lot. I'll never forget this. And it was at night, and they tried to make us leave. And I thought, I remember saying to the producer, man, we've never gotten that treatment.
Interesting.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. We're broadcasting this evening in unseasonably cold weather from Las Vegas, site of the deadliest mass shooting in American history. It's been 2 months since Stephen Paddock murdered 58 people. It happened right behind where I'm sitting right now. And despite a lengthy and expensive investigation, a huge number of unanswered questions, some of them the most basic questions about that shooting, remain unanswered. We've come here in a search for answers, and we're going to devote a portion of the show to that in a minute. Stephen Paddock's killing spree on October 1st was the deadliest one-man shooting in the history of this country. 58 people were killed. He died as well. It's a tragedy that demands answers, but instead questions have only piled up. Why have we heard nothing more about Mary Lou Danley, for example, his girlfriend, Paddock's girlfriend, even though police say she may be hiding something? Where was Vegas's 40-member SWAT team as Paddock went on his rampage? For ourselves, we have asked why Las Vegas police have repeatedly obstructed our questions or been outright hostile to us. Weeks ago, they refused to provide answers to basic questions about security guard Jesus Campos, the one who took off for Mexico right after the shooting. Today, they made it impossible for us to get a filming permit on public land. Why is that? We have no idea, but it tells you something interesting. Catherine Lombardo is an attorney representing many of the shooting victims here in Las Vegas. Doug Papa is a former police officer and casino security expert, and they join us both tonight. Thank you both for coming on.
Thanks, Tucker.
So, Doug, give me the overview here. We were talking in the break. We have compiled a list, my producers and I, of questions to which we have no answers. Very basic questions. I won't repeat them on the air, but basically we know basically nothing.
That's true.
Why?
I don't have any idea.
Interesting. Was it on any specific lot?
Yeah, it was right.
Part of the scene?
It was a camera shot, so we were, I was doing like a stand up facing the area where the shooting took place, and
they just weren't about it.
No, and they were weird about it too, really weird about it, and hostile, and that was just so striking. Because again, if you ask anyone who works at Fox, you see cops and they're just so nice because everyone hates cops except, the Fox News anchors. That's their view anyway. So I never experienced that before.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was
weird.
The whole government just shut up about it. And the mainstream media, it was like 3 days later, the story just died. Most horrific mass shooting in American history. And those victims, like a lot of them are still alive, but they're paralyzed. A lot of them have brain damage. A lot of them lost limbs or eyes or things like that. It's a real tragedy, and it's easy to get into conspiracy land only with it. And I do think it's important to try to uncover what really happened, obviously, to try to dig out what the hell is this. But it's also, it's easy to lose sight of the fact that that was hundreds of Americans. And then by extension, thousands and thousands of Americans whose lives will never be the same because of that, who lost family members, lost loved ones. And these were it's really sad on that map.
Rachel Shepard has a deep scar that runs from her chest past her waist.
Ugh, when I see it, it's just a constant reminder.
The 27-year-old is one of 500 wounded concert victims still fighting to recover from the Las Vegas massacre. Here she is enjoying the concert before 3 bullets tore into her upper body. These women from Southern California share the same horrific bond.
I was shot in the face.
A bullet exploded through Natalie Grumet's jaw. Brace yourself, a bullet took out Chelsea Romo's eye.
My vision was taken right away.
The bullet went through my chest, into my stomach, my liver, my spleen.
There was so much shrapnel in my right eye that it broke the machine they were suctioning it out with.
That I was telling you about, Vegas shooting map, they have death reports of like all the victims pinned onto the map, and it gives you like their age, their name, their profession, and in some cases it gives you a little description of who they were and what their life was like and what they were doing. And it's just so sad to read because like a lot of them is like, was there with her boyfriend to celebrate their anniversary, like was a kindergarten teacher, or, you know, things like that. That's just, and that's where it really hits home, where it's like, you need an explanation that explains why something so evil would happen.
Yes.
And I think that's the enduring question that keeps the investigation open, but it's also the enduring question that makes it so that it wasn't solved by just like these basic explanations, because we easily debunked the mainstream narrative. But then there was lots of other sort of like half-baked versions of maybe it's this, but none of them explained how evil it was, and none of them explained the scope and scale of what it was. And to this day, there's no one proven theory. I've just sort of laid out what is the most explored, and I think by my standard, the most credible version of a theory. And a lot of people are pretty much on that theory at this point, that they think that that's the one that is a version of true. But it's not the only theory, and it's far from proven, that's for sure. And it wouldn't be, I mean, there's the thing, you asked, like, has there ever been any investigations? I'm sure the government already knows.
Of course.
Like, that's the reason why you get the cover up of this magnitude, is because they know what happened.
It's obvious. Whenever there's not an investigation, it's not because no one's interested.
Yeah.
And we've seen that a lot. In fact, we've seen it so much that you sort of wonder at what point it's just impossible to have like a functioning justice system.
You notice that anytime the narrative isn't, the facts of some event don't fit their narrative, that they sweep it aside.
Right.
Las Vegas shooting. I mean, how often do they talk about that?
Zero.
Do they ever want to
Still
go
no
seek the truth on? Still no answers, right?
Yeah.
Because nobody believes anything.
Yeah. And it's just over and over again, when something happens, we feel like we're not like Charlie Kirk is months ago now. And to this day, I think the most Americans still feel like we don't have an honest set of answers.
What kind of pressure does it require to get a president who campaigned against exactly this thing for 10 years to do exactly this thing? What does it take to do that?
I wish I knew definitively. I think there's two potentials, there's two schools of thought. I mean, one is the media echo chamber, the donors, the way the Israelis come in and kind of launder the information like I described previously. And then the other option is much darker. I mean, we still don't know what happened in Butler. We don't know what happened with Charlie Kirk. And by no means am I saying the Israelis did this or any of that, but I'm saying there's a lot of unanswered questions there. And there is enough data to at least say that there's a good chance that President Trump feels like he is under threat. We're not allowed to ask, basically, was there any linkage between what took place with Asif Merchant, who was recruited by the Iranians to come to America to recruit proxies to kill President Trump. The FBI put a confidential human source at him. All this is public now. This is all out there in the open. And he's arrested, and then 2 days later, a sniper takes a shot at President Trump. We think Merchant and we know the CHS was talking about the human source that the FBI put at Merchant. They were talking about, hey, we could kill the president potentially with a sniper rifle. But then they arrest him. 2 days later, Butler happens. And Crooks, according to the official narrative anyways, is an enigma. We don't know anything about him. We can't get into his devices. If we did get into his devices, maybe there's nothing there. No more questions are allowed to be asked about Thomas Crooks. The DHS IG is currently being blocked from investigating Butler as well. That's out in the media. That's all well known. Your investigative journalists found that Crooks did indeed have an online persona,
quite an
online
extensive
footprint,
one.
and he was talking to people. So it's like, why aren't we investigating this? You know, I mean, if
an attempted murder of a presidential
attempted murder of a presidential
utilizing going forward, particular witnesses you think that we should have, any thoughts you have about what and whom we should be bringing in to testify?
One of the videos that I've seen online is from a gentleman named John Conan, who talks about the possibility of a second shooter, and he shows a video, Miss Lee, where in this video he shows a bullet traveling down a path and the disruption that round supposedly makes, and then flies into one of the stadium fence railings. That shows that it would have been very, very difficult for that round to travel the path that it did had it come from Thomas Crooks. I think that you need to bring this gentleman in, see his evidence, and if you don't think it holds water, then you need to make that assessment. John Conan is somebody I think you guys should bring in here and look at the video evidence that he has of a bullet traveling, in a trajectory, in a path that would not have been able to come from Thomas Crooks.
With the Vegas shooting, with a lot of these things, it can kind of get swept under the rug, right? It can kind of get put away. And with Vegas, they managed to sort of just stop talking about it. And a lot of independent journalists were loud, but there's a lot of other stuff going on, and none of them really had massive platforms. And we weren't in the era of the internet we are in today yet. And so it was enough to just kind of sweep it under the rug. And they never had to build some big complex alternative narrative and flood the zone and have shills kind of doing. And Charlie's is just a different thing. And it's like each time, like with COVID, we got our own slice of what is weird going on here. With Vegas, we got our own slice of a cover up, right? Different suspicious crimes that aren't explained require different cover ups. And it's like everyone has their own opinion about what's going on with Charlie. I have mine for sure. But the people are getting wise to this it's not adding up thing. It shouldn't be a mystery. Like when you have a regular crime in your town and you get a regular sheriff to come and explain the crime and show you the evidence and you get a regular court trial about it. I don't think that's usually some grand mystery of I think that the local sheriff is covering up the fact that this robbery happened. It's no, it's just you've got evidence, you've got photos, it is what it is. But there's these certain moments in history where, not because everyone's wanting everything to always be this way, but because sometimes the facts don't line up. They just don't line up with what we're told at all. And Vegas is one of the most intensely powerful, tragic, violent, and deadly of all of them. And it's one of the ones where the facts line up less than any other.
I totally agree.
It's one of the most
I'm actually shocked
mysteries
by this conversation. Yeah. As someone with a passing familiarity with it, I thought, but I just didn't realize how absurd the story is. It's absurd.
The chief of police, he became governor of Nevada or something. Right? So again, there's a guy named John Cullen who did an analysis of the shooting, and his conclusion...
a relative?
A relative?
Yeah.
No, it's spelled different. John worked for Oracle. He's some on-the-spectrum code head. He also analyzed the Butler shooting, the audios of the Butler shooting.
He's an on-the-spectrum code head.
He's on the spectrum code head. He sort of bears down and grabs on something a little too firmly, I think, but he brings
as on the spectrum code heads.
Yeah,
do.
I know.
Yeah.
And there was pretty good evidence that a lot of the shooting was coming from helicopters behind the Mandalay, and he tracked the transponders.
And the crazy part is how much there actually is right there open source. Just VegasShootingMap.com that I was telling you about just that one webpage has just hours and hours and hours of stuff that immediately disprove the mainstream narrative. And it's just there.
That's
on the
COVID.
internet.
It was all there. I mean, vaccinating people you knew got COVID. I mean, what?
But first, my thoughts at the end of day 32, if you can believe it, America in shutdown. Now, as more COVID-19 data keep pouring in from across the globe, many key questions remain unanswered. Why New York's COVID death numbers are so high compared to other cities, including China, Chinese cities outside of Wuhan, and in countries neighboring China. Now look at this chart. New York City has seen, of course, 8,632 deaths, or 102 per 100,000 people. Yet in Beijing, with a population of 18.8 million, it's only reporting 8 deaths total, or 0.04 per 100,000 people. In Shanghai, only reporting 7 deaths, or 0.03 deaths per 100,000. In Tianjin, it's 3 COVID deaths, or 0.02 deaths per 100,000. This is totally weird. That's the nice way of putting it.
I remember this was happening. Not that I knew a lot of vaccinated people. I tried not to spend time with. I was always uncomfortable around the vaccinated, but I did know some, and they all had COVID, and I'm like, this is clearly a lie. And then every day you'd be, many times, right? They never got over it because they still have COVID. But then you'd watch on TV, safe and effective, you can't get COVID. And it's like, how can they say that? I just sat like a dog with my jaw open, like, what is this? Am I watching this? Yeah. But no, I completely agree with that. So where will you be sort of starting research next?
I am pretty dedicated to sticking with the Charlie thing for a while until we figure it out. But that's not your question.
Well, that is my question. I mean, so that's where your energy is focused right now.
I firmly believe that. Here's my perspective and my bias, just to qualify what I said before. I'm sure people already know this, but I believe that what happened there was not what we were told. And just like as with Las Vegas, the moment that what you're told is not true, a million other things immediately come into play, because why the fuck are you lying about it? And then so what is this? Because suddenly, if it's even slightly not true, we're looking at a cover up, plus we're looking at a different perpetrator. We're looking at something else here. And so when I look at Charlie Kirk's murder, I see what looks like a cover up, and I see that that's not true for many reasons. But then I can't square any other version of the story that is not one of the most important political moments in our time right now, in terms of the political factions involved, in terms of the shifting geopolitical relationships in the world, in terms of what's going to be happening to my people in America today and now, and like the unity or disunity that we might experience.
And then, Charlie Kirk is killed publicly in a very horrific way, and we're not really even allowed to look into that at all. And Charlie Kirk was one of President Trump's closest advisors, and he also advocated heavily against a war with Iran. He was in the Oval Office in the lead up to the 12-day war. I wasn't particularly close with Charlie. He was very gracious to me when I was running for Congress, very, very supportive. So we knew each other. And the last time I saw Charlie Kirk on this earth was in June in the West Wing, in the stairway. And I said hi to him, and he looked me in the eye, and he said very loudly, and it's a small, you've been in the West Wing, it's small, it's a tight space. And he said, "Joe, stop us from getting into a war with Iran," very loudly.
He was single-minded.
And he walked off, and he went, I believe, into the Oval. So when one of President Trump's closest advisors, who is vocally advocating for us to not go to war with Iran and for us to rethink at least our relationship with the Israelis, and then he's suddenly publicly assassinated, and we're not allowed to ask any questions about that, it's a data point. It's a data point that we need to look into.
What do you mean when you say we're not allowed to ask any questions about that?
We've been told that this individual, Robinson, is a lone gunman, and maybe he is. But the investigation that I was a part of, the National Counterterrorism Center was a part of, we were stopped from continuing to investigate.
Over the next 10 years here and beyond, And so when I think about like, what's the most important story that I can devote my time to figuring out right now to hopefully ensure a better America for my children to grow up in, it's Charlie Kirk. And I don't really believe that we're really going to ever get an answer, which is unfortunately a hallmark of these types of things. But I'm damn well going to spend my time to try.
So, as a general rule of thumb, anytime that someone gets shot in public in America and it's a big conspiracy and it seems like we're being lied to, it's probably worth following along with John Cullen. He broke a whole bunch of the stuff wide open about the Las Vegas shooting back in 2017, and he certainly is getting involved in this one. John can be a bit of a pain. He can be a bit of an ass online, but he does some damn fine work. And he has been tracking a couple of developments on this story that basically no one else is talking about. And whether that's for some suspicious reason or because it's a little too nuanced and esoteric and people just haven't quite caught up to where John is at yet, I don't know. But let's take a quick look at some of these flying things that John is finding.
That doesn't mean I'm going to exclude everything else. Like, for example, I'm actually, now that you kind of brought this Vegas shooting back up, I've gotten inspired where I want to go back and learn a shitload more about that and kind of dig even deeper and get more familiar with that, because that will inform the other thing, and then that will inform the other thing. So I'm very much focused on what happened to Charlie Kirk and watching this trial play out and watching the spiderwebbing branches of that play out. But I'm also trying to shift back to, I would mention this app, so I'm shifting back to focus on corporate corruption in America as well, because in a lot of ways, like the big, like tinfoily, like 9/11 kind of things, they're fun, but like how your food is being poisoned and how the corporations are being incentivized to basically shit all over us and take all of our money, like those sorts of things affect our day-to-day lives, right? Private equity affects like real people every day in America. So that's a very much more grounded thing that I'm trying to focus on. And then the other thing is, well, actually, I shouldn't really talk about that story yet, but I have a friend that is on a story that is kind of like a financial thing that we'll look into later. So,
Ian Carroll, thank you for spending all this time.
It's been a pleasure, man. I feel like we could have talked.
I was about to say I've been a longtime fan, but you've only been here 3 years. So, but I am a fan, and I think you're brave and really interesting and trustworthy. So thank you.
It was an honor. Thanks.
Every time you come around, you know I can't say no. Every time the sun goes down, I let you take control. I can feel the paradise before my world implodes. And tonight had something wonderful. My bad habits lead to late nights, sitting alone, conversations with a stranger I barely know, swearing this will be the last, but it probably won't. I got nothing left to lose or use or do. My bad habits lead to white eyes staring into space, and I know I lose control of the things that I say. Yeah, I was looking for a way out, now I can't escape. Nothing happens after two. It's true, it's true. My bad habits lead to you. My bad habits lead to you. My bad habits lead to you. Every pure intention ends when the good times